If I can get up the
All right. Welcome to I guess an impromptu this weekend CBL. This is the postseason preview for the CBL. We are kind of going through. I've got the conference tournament brackets all set on the sheet here that Ram has pulled up on our screens. I'm working on the NIT bracket as well. So what are you guys thinking about the regular season? Any kind of thoughts that you have on the way the season went, guys? How are you doing tonight?
Yeah, I mean, I think, without getting into specifics, I think this is a really successful first regular season. You know, there's obviously some ups and downs in terms of drama and whatnot, but the regular season was full of a lot of excitement. The last week didn't disappoint, as we're going to get into these brackets. We're going to see a lot of upsets, a lot of big teams taking some 0-2s, as I see Peter mentions it, not for everyone. Hey, but I've gotten a lot of DMs from teams that aren't even competing that have said that this is the most fun, regular season they've ever had, even if they haven't been winning games. So, just fun to tag along and follow the storylines, and can't complain once once you look at the standings and I see FIU up there, number one in the AAC. So not all's well in South Florida. What about you, Ram?
I mean, this is the most ridiculous league I've ever been a part of. We've talked about this ad nauseum, and I love it because of that. I mean, the fact that we're even sitting here on a Sunday night in the middle of the season while MLB draft is going on right before All-Star week, and we're talking about what's going to happen to our playoffs. It's kind of a privilege, and it's just real fun to be here doing this stuff. I'm always excited to talk about the CBL. I try to explain to people who do not do baseball. I still got my championship belt over here, by the way, in the corner, so that'll come around later too. But yeah, this is just one of those things. I should be probably given a belt, at least for regular season champion, who's with us too. Dr. DVU Jeremy is here. I appreciate that you could take some time and join us as Ash is compiling the list for the NIT, because the NIT is obviously going to be a 64-team tournament starting tomorrow as well, technically right after the All-Star break. But I mean, there's a lot of people who would love to know your thoughts, Jeremy, about the league and like how you felt going into this, how you feel right now, considering you did complete the 30-0 run and stay undefeated. So why don't you give some people a little insight here? They want to hear from you.
Yeah, I mean, Ash and company that just set this monster up. What a league, and just the amount of trades that took place in this league, the amount of this conversation and discord and interaction with one another and challenging one another. Just what a league. It's been a ride for sure. And of course, having put together the team that I've been able to put together this season through all these trades and through all of the draft process and everything like that, it's been amazing to even participate in what I've been able to do. I never would have thought to myself, starting in this 128 team league, that I would have run the table through the regular season and been undefeated at this point. So I'm excited. Most of my guys are healthy from what it looks like, and that's the way you want to enter the postseason. So I'm looking forward to this run of things to see where it takes me, hoping for some success. We'll see if I continue to have that success.
Yeah, I could. I know Ash is going to be doing some hard work over there, so I'll try to take some lead here. I see that Duke is taking some time to jump in and say Ash's hands are shaking, seeing he has to play me in the first round. That's no spoiler. Duke is facing Louisville Cardinals in the first round. I see Jesse turn around saying the absolute most fun league you've ever been in. It's always fun to hear that. I am, as Ash mentions, you're trying to get the seating done for the NIT, so we're going to do a little talking for a bit. I'm going to bounce back and forth between the Google sheet we have here and the actual standings and fan tracks, because we'll see a few teams some points, so we'll go back and forth to get a visual. You've got a question right there, Dr. DBU. Peter says, what matters more to you, being undefeated or indirectly being the cause for the name of the in-season tournament?
Well, it would not have been a good memory if I'd lost that said tournament. But being that I ended up being victorious, I will take it. I don't mind. I don't mind being acclaimed the fame of being the Buttermaker champ for the inaugural season. So I'll take that. I mean, the season has lots of ups and downs. You kind of watch what the team does through the season. You make lots of adjustments, and just that process, it's all exciting. I mean, it was exciting last week going for 1,500 points. It's exciting this week to watch myself get 30 starts, although they weren't always successful this week. But all in all, I put together a good game, and thankfully I'm entering the season healthy. That's what matters.
Yeah, the long term phrase is the best ability is availability, right? And so if your guys are going to be healthy going in, we lucked. A lot of conferences have talked about this, that we saw a few injuries like going right into the All-Star break. Some guys went down that were prominent on major teams, and we've now got a couple days for the All-Star break to see if that'll become a big issue. A lot of teams are also going right out of the All-Star break with starting their aces, which means in this kind of 2-week format for the first week of the playoffs, because of the All-Star system, we're probably going to see a lot of aces going in. You stacked up on really high-end pitching. Do you feel like that favors you, or are you feeling good? Are you nervous to say you're feeling good, Jeremy? And Chris, this will go to you too, because you're kind of in a similar spot. You were also able to be the number 1 seed in your conference, right?
Yeah.
You're going to be facing the number 8 seed. And how do you feel? Do you feel nervous? Do you want to talk trash? So, Jeremy, you first. What do you feel it?
The aces definitely make a big difference. I wouldn't have the confidence in the team that I've got if my aces weren't doing the work. That said, like Hunter Brown this week, I probably gave me a negative spot through a double start. So, you always that's why I wanted to add all the additional starters by the trade deadline, because I knew that I don't want Hunter Brown having a bad start being the end of my season. So I kind of took an approach there. I'm going to have a lot of aces, which I did even before the season started. But even at this trade deadline, I was making lots of deals in order to bulk up, which you can see put 30 starts on the board for me this week. So I'm hoping the All-Star week always messes things up with pitching schedules, and so I am a little nervous about that. Like, how many starts am I going to start the first round of the playoffs with? And maybe more importantly, as these weeks progress, how many starts am I going to end up with because of the way that the weeks are changing with starts?
I did have another question for you, and everybody kind of brushed me off when we were on last time. I thought when we were looking at this and we were kind of going through each conference by conference and trying to predict how many teams would get in from each conference, I made a suggestion that you could sandbag in the conference tournament, knowing that you've already locked up a national championship tournament spot, and maybe take one for the team and ensure that the Big 12 were to get an additional team into the national championship, which would give that conference a better chance at potentially having, the overall winner of the national championship and getting those 16 teams a complimentary season next year.
Yeah, I side with more of Ram's take on that last week, and I'm just going to go for it. If you want to get in the postseason, earn it, and you want to be in there, you better win. So, I'm going for the whole thing. I'm hoping not to lose a single matchup in this conference. I recognize that I've got a slot already assigned to me in the national tourney, but I want to win this thing, so I'm going for it.
I appreciate the shout out, by the way, to the listen, because I remember saying that. I was like, there's no way that what I understand from this man that he's even thinking for a second about sandbagging. Chris, I'm going to throw this back to you too. I mean, going into the All-Star break and things like that, you've stacked up on some good pitching. How do you feel? Are you nervous about it? Do you feel like, okay, I know that because you locked up the number 1 seed too, and we'll talk about it when we get to your conference, you did lock up a statistically easier matchup, right? And nobody in your conference is easy, so I'm saying easier specifically. But how do you feel going into the All-Star week? Do you feel like it's going to benefit you when they're coming out of the break and you got some more guys going?
Well, I think at least in my scenario, I do think it benefits me specifically based on my my number 1 arm being Garrett Crochet, right? He's not going to be participating in the All-Star game because he wants to have his scheduled start, post All-Star break, which likely puts him in line for a double start on that first week. And you said it, and we've been echoing this for months at this point. No matchup is easy. Particularly in this conference, right? I was up until this week, I was slated to play one of the two teams that ended up beating me. They ended up falling out without spoiling too much for those who haven't checked the standings. But the team that I am playing put up 800 points versus me when we played in the regular season. So no slouch in that regard either. Jeremy said it, I have Hunter Brown as well. We actually share a lot of the same players on our team, which is going to be great if we end up matching up in the playoffs because, it's going to be a battle of the others, and my others are not as good as Jeremy's. But, Hunter Brown, I think for the week gave us minus 18.5, right? And he had 2 starts, which is something that, we haven't had all season. So, anything can happen, and I don't have the luxury of having 30 starts, right? Before this, final day, I've been locked into a really, really, really intense battle with, actual, rival school, FAU, where they put up over 1,300 points, and I needed every one of those 1,400 points to beat them. And I did so with 16 starts, right? So I was a bit concerned earlier in the week because I only had 16. So, for example, DBU had 30. I think Duke had more than 20, right? So it was a little bit concerning to see because it doesn't give me as much room for error, right? I'm expecting those starts to all be great, and that's just not something that you can realistically expect out of them when I'm throwing guys out there like Miles Michaelis. But I can't complain, right? We're gonna head into the playoffs, head into the conference tournament. Sorry, with the last 2-0. Been a hell of a ride and a big win against a really good team that I'll be seeing. We'll see if everything goes to plan. I might see later on in the conference tournament, but the vibes are definitely high at FIU right now after that win.
So you mentioned something there that I'm going to touch on before we go right into the conference matchup specifically. You talked about the fact that both you and DBU have Hunter Brown. Now, as we get to the cream of the crop in the tournaments here, it'll be a little bit more effective or a question in the Natty. But even in the conference tournaments, it's clear that with 8 copies of good players that you're going to start running into your same players.
Mm-hmm.
And this happened playfully, like during the regular season. You're like, oh, I had this guy, he had a good start. Turns out my opponent had him too. But when we get to the cream of the crop, obviously that's going to become more common. Do you start to get to a position where you start overthinking? Like Hunter Brown is a guy where you said, look, he was outstanding all season. He's a red shirt for seniors who have him. He is literally pitching like one of the best pitchers in the league right now. But he gave you a negative in a 2-start week. Right? Do you start to overthink and think to yourself, well, if I bench this guy for the negative when the other guy's got him, or no, he's been my workhorse, I can never bench him. Where does that mentality come in? How do you start feeling about that? I see both of you nodding. It's got to be kind of a wild concept when you relate to this league and think, all right, am I even considering benching my aces because my opponent has the same player? Chris, how do you feel?
Yeah, obviously not an ace, but I had a similar situation today, for example. I came in to Sunday, I think down 39 points, and we both had Merrill Kelly going. And I wasn't, for whatever reason, I wasn't super confident in his start. I did end up throwing him out there because JC threw him out there, and I wasn't going to let him, reap the benefits of a quality start if I had him. But it definitely crossed my mind to say, okay, I'm down 39. I have a little bit more wiggle room because I have an extra start than on a Sunday. Maybe I take Merrill Kelly out. Granted, in hindsight, if I would have taken him out, maybe I lose that matchup. I think we ended up by like 60 points apart. He had a pretty good outing. But you said it, right? That strategy does come to play. I think all year I've only sat 2 starts. So I'm likely going to just start my pitchers and just hope for the best. It's the playoffs, baby. Like you want to do everything you can to win. And in those matchups, I think I'm going to play it by ear, right? Let's say I'm playing Jeremy at some point, and if Jeremy sits Hunter Brown, it's definitely a mind game, right? Because do I sit him? Because what does he know that I don't, right? What kind of matchup, what kind of analytics has he gone through to come to the conclusion to sit an ace, right? So I feel like in a vacuum, if the other team is sitting a starter that I believe in, I'm going to play him. But if he's playing him, there's no way I'm sitting him. Because if it's a negative, whatever, it just cancels out. But if it's a positive and he sat him, I'm not gonna beat myself up and potentially lose a playoff matchup because I'm trying to get cute, right? I'm gonna play my guys. If the other team wants to, be strategic about it, then by all means. But I'll more than likely, 99.9% of the time, just play the guys that I got.
Yeah, Ram, you said the same thing last week. Any regrets that you're going to have? I would have a major regret if I got cute and benched some player and they ended up throwing 60 points and it was the difference between winning and losing. If I have to eat, a negative 40 by taking a risk and it doesn't work out, I'll live with that a lot more than I'm going to live with benching a key guy. But, the only player that I think I'd really consider benching at this point that I've had on my roster most of the season is Severino, and I managed to trade him away. So I'm not too concerned about that risk anymore.
Yeah, it's this promises to be fun because we're going to break into some of the conference matchups now, and there's a lot going on because the NIT is going to be running concurrent, and we'll talk about the NIT as the night goes on as well. But the conference tournaments, I mean, for any of you who were a little bit unfamiliar, I figure you know it by now. But the top 8 of each of our 8 conferences are now going to start moving into their playoffs or their conference tournament. Each conference has a different determination as to how the automatic second bid from their conferences getting in. Some people have it be essentially the loser of their final. Some have the most points. Some have the best record. So we do have a little creativity in that. But there's going to be 2 automatic bids that are coming out of these 8 teams that are going to the national tournament. And then we're going to have some time after, based on record and points, to determine the rest of the teams that make it in. So I see Luke and Ty are asking if they finish as record twins towards the end of the league there, by the way. So they're having a little fun. And Luke, of course, the commissioner of the Big East, and he's on the show with us at times. Ty, our stats guy, the head writer at the Substack for Best Damn Sports. We're always glad to have them around. So let's get into the conference tournament talk because I know that's what people are here for, and I don't want to leave them waiting too long. And we'll move over. So we have right here, you can see the ACC is on here first in the corner here. And we've got the matchup set up: East Tennessee State versus Pitt, Virginia versus Army, Louisville versus Duke, and Clemson versus Miami. And I'm going to switch over in a moment to the Fantrax screen so we can have that going. We know here Duke has been talked about a lot in the ACC because they were winless for a bit. It looked like they were well off from being able to make it into the playoffs, and now NIT is beyond them. They've made it to the conference tourney in what most people have considered the weakest conference. Are we going with East Tennessee State as a favorite here? Do we think the hot streak continues for Duke and the boys? Is Ash actually afraid sitting there? I'll get to him and bother him for a bit. What are we looking at here? Is it, we talk about availability and ability, but also you got to get hot at the right time if you want to make it through something like this. And Duke has been hot. And there's some other guys here that have figured that stuff out. So as I switch over to the ACC side on Fantrax, Jeremy, do you have any thoughts on the ACC? What do these matchups stand out to you? How are you feeling?
Yeah, I mean, Duke definitely had a great week this week. And sorry, Ash, but I like his momentum right now. I think that that's the way. If you're going to be in a conference that's has been as strong as some of the others, and you can get hot at the right moment, you're looking for a good conference to be in at the right time.
I agree.
Like Duke.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I do like Duke, and I do think East Tennessee State, the 2 of them matching up, I could see them coming to the conference final.
No, I was going to say the same thing. I mean, I think just for the fun of it, right? I'm going to pick Duke to win the entire conference tournament for the ACC. They've been I don't want to be speculative, but they've been one of the hottest teams in the ACC, at least from the outside looking in the last month and a half, 2 months, and they've really just scratched the surface, right? I think this week, like I said, they had like 21 starts, which does attribute to that. I think they ended up with like over almost 1,200 points on the week, which is dangerous against anybody, let alone in a weaker conference so far. So, they work all the way up to 6. They get Ash, and again, sorry Ash, I think I'm gonna run with Andrew there, and then they get Clemson, who Clemson did beat him as of I think in the last like 2-3 matchups. Clemson did beat him. If Clemson does win theirs, but I like Duke's chances, right? You want to get hot at the right time, and this week they were blazing.
Well, I also want to give some credit, and we talked about this on the last show, to the Virginia Cavaliers. Mark is a frequent member of our show, and you can see here he finished 4th, same record as Ash. He's got more points than a lot of these guys in here, Ash included. He was only outscored by Clemson and East Tennessee State. So although it was a weaker conference, this is a team that, and he's facing off against Army, who's solid, but it's very possible, just based on the numbers here, that he had over 2,000 more. So that's 1,000 even if you cut it in half. Virginia could go on and cause some trouble, and they might like being the underdog. I think sometimes you absolutely want to be in a position where you don't want to be talked about as much going into this, and we all try to draw attention on ourselves in our own ways, but at the same time, I know like when we get to DBU's conference, you've got to be talking about the fact that you've had a target on your back since before the league even opened up because of the deals that you made. But looking over here at the ACC, I mean, this is anybody's conference because of the fact that, as you can see here on the standings, we did not have a ranked team finish in this conference. I know there's going to be one more round of voting, so we might see a small change. We might see East Tennessee State sneak in or something like that, but there's no ranked teams in here, but they are sending 2 people to the Natty, and if they stay hot, there's no reason to say we're not seeing some Cinderella runs out of a conference like this. Ash, I know you're pretty preoccupied over there, but if you do have a minute, you want to talk about your own conference, if you have a second, and answer all these claims, because Duke's going off in the comments saying you're scared and this is over for you. And both of the boys here, Chris and Jeremy, have picked Duke against you. So I feel like it's only fair to ask you to take a look and give some commentary here.
I am not real confident. My team has been anemic this week. Like, on it was either Friday or Saturday. I can't remember which now, but my hitters had negative points for the day. I was like, if your hitters go negative for a full day, that's pretty bad. So, and he's had all the momentum. So I am not feeling real confident. And I'm glad that we started talking about having these consolation tournament brackets for the losers of the conference tournaments. So we'll look and see how that goes. I am filling in the last region of the NIT on this Google sheet that I put together. And then I will get all the matchups entered on Fantrax as soon as possible. But I did find it interesting that Oregon finished 44th in total points for on the season and did not qualify for their conference tournament. To me, that was pretty amazing that, a team would finish that high in the overall point standings and not even make their conference tournament. And that just speaks to the depth that the Pac-12 has. I don't know. I found that pretty interesting. A lot of times we've talked about the Big East and the American as the 2 best conferences, but when you have a team that has scored that many points, not even qualifying for the conference tournament, I thought that was pretty interesting to track. Another team that was pretty high up in the points for and did not make their conference tournament was UTSA and Carleton. And the top 4 seeds in the NIT, by the way, are Oregon, UTSA, Carleton, and South Alabama. So Mr. Pink, the 4th best team not in their conference tournament. I know we were talking to him last week about he had a chance to sneak into his conference tournament, but it looks like that didn't happen. And I believe UTSA and South Alabama are both in the Big 12.
Yeah.
So DB, that kind of speaks to the difficulty that the Big 12 was to navigate this year.
Yeah, it was even looking at like conferences. Of course, I've paid a lot of attention to each of the teams in the Big 12 this season. I'd kind of wonder if that's the same for each of us. Do you have a better sense of the quality of your teams in your own conference? I don't look at any of those 8 teams in our conference and think that's a cakewalk. I've seen those teams put up numbers throughout the year, And while I think I've got a pretty good shot at being the winner of the Big 12, none of them make me feel like, oh, this is going to be an easy ride. They're good teams.
Yeah, I think in the ACC, any of the 8 teams in the conference tournament could win the conference tournament. I have felt all along that the league has been very balanced. Virginia is another team. We talk about Duke being hot, but Virginia is another team that has been that has won a lot of games in the back half of the regular season. So that is another team that would not surprise me to see them in the finals of the conference tournament.
Yeah, I mean, I spoke to the idea that right now there are no ranked teams in here, but East Tennessee State, the Cavs were on a hot run, but East Tennessee, Army, Miami were each ranked at one point during the season as well, and they have received votes throughout. So, and you see here, if we look at the bottom 3, I mean, Duke, Miami, and Pitt each finished with 17 wins. So just that tiebreaker amongst the 3 of them that separates the seeding, that's also going to be a big deal because you have Duke facing Louisville. They've got the highest seed, and Pitt's facing East Tennessee State, but they finished with the same amount of wins.
Yeah, you're entirely right. And let's not forget, Duke was a preseason, I think, top 10. So we knew the capability that Andrew had to draft a team, and so I'm not shocked, right? Like, it was a hell of a run to even get to this point, but I'm not entirely shocked, right? It was a quick turnaround, quick decision making. But you guys, you and Ash both, you said it. Virginia is also another one of those teams that can very quietly make a lot of noise in this conference, and I agree. I think anybody 1 through 8 realistically wouldn't shock me to see win this conference.
Yeah, and I mean, again, it's going to be a tough one because you've got to get through. You don't know who's going to get hot. I mean, DBU spoke to his conference, but it's true in a lot of them. These guys are paying attention to their specific situation here because did Andrew just decide to try one day? Yeah, he just started winning. He went with it, which was nice. And I love it because I commended him for at least not giving up, right? There's a lot of guys who you see, okay, we're through about 7-8 weeks. They think they're out of playoff position and they just pack it in. So I'll always respect somebody that turns around and says, you know what, I'm going to give it a shot, especially in a conference like the ACC. And I love it because I do think there could be some guys that can cause trouble out of here. I do think, as much as it might pain Ash, the most interesting matchup is, can Duke continue this run and beat Louisville? Ash has been real quiet throughout the year. He's gotten a few top 25 votes here and there, but he's preferred to play it low-key and kind of keep the attention off him. But, he's now facing the loudest man in the Discord, and Andrew. So if he wins, it's going to be talked about, and if he loses, it's going to be talked about. So he's kind of in the unfortunate situation of that draw here. But I do think that's the most interesting matchup here because at the end of the day, I mean, we'll see what happens. If Duke can beat Louisville, then they can win the tournament. And I don't have the notes in front of me, and I don't know if you do, Ash, so if you don't, it's okay. But how did you all decide that the second team that's an automatic bid for this conference to the Natty?
Most points of teams not or the team that doesn't win the conference tournament, whoever has the most points for on the season would get it.
So if East Tennessee State does not win, they will still get an auto. So they have the safety in this conference.
Yeah, they're in the national tournament.
Good. East Tennessee State has their at least comfort in the fact that they have a guaranteed shot to the Natty no matter what happens in the conference. And if they lose, it looks like Clemson is the second highest in there, so they might feel a little safe too.
Yeah, absolutely. The team that I'm kind of am still stunned by is Miami. If you guys remember, they started the season 14-0. And now they finished the year 17-13. So it's been quite the slide since that, week 7, where at the end of week 7 when they were 14-0, and now find themselves, having only been 3-13 since that time.
Yeah,
so that's a team that's wild to me.
We talked about it a lot on the Discord earlier in the season, right? UM was claiming that their ranking was too low, and we kept reiterating, right, as I think all 4 of us are on the voting panel, the points at some point matter, right? We saw it with Rhode Island. Rhode Island was being a little bit disrespected about a month ago, and the points started to come up closer to the deadline, and you see it reflected in the ranking. And that was the same thing with UM, right? they weren't putting up a lot of points. Their competition was at the time also not putting up a lot of points, and the record kind of reflect that, right? A really good start to the season, but they made it. They made it to the conference tournament. They're the 7th seed. They get Clemson. I don't know what their matchup was like in the regular season, but all it takes is to get hot for 3 weeks, and you can claim that you're the best team in the ACC.
Sorry, I was trying to add this to the studio. I didn't realize I was going to go ahead and pull it up. I thought it might be easier to look at the brackets for each conference this way. And if you guys don't have any other comments on the ACC, we could transition to the American, because I think it's one of the more interesting conference tournaments there is. You're muted, Ram.
Oh, I was going to put Jeremy on the spot real quick, because Chris went ahead and he said that he thinks Duke is going to win it all. So and now if you're back with us, Ash, I'm going to ask too, do you have a pick out of the ACC that you think is going to win that conference tournament? We've got to ask who you think is going to do it. And I'm going to ask you too, Ash, and you got to be honest, because those are your boys right in there. So
I think I'm going to go with Clemson. I've been a big fan of theirs all year long. I think Duke will probably win their first round matchup, but I like Clemson to run the table in the ACC and get to the national tournament with East Tennessee State also qualifying out of the ACC. Probably the only 2 teams that would qualify then.
And Jeremy, that to you too. So we've got Clemson from Ash. We've got Duke from Chris. I can pull it back up if you need the teams in front of you.
I've got it in front of me. I think I'll ride with East Tennessee State. They've been really consistent throughout the season. I could see Duke as coming in if they can stay hot and taking the title, but I'm going to go with the 1 seed.
Yeah, I'd be remiss if I didn't make a pick too, and I actually have the same opinion. I know that we're talking about hot streaks and these guys doing things, but East Tennessee State has also had a bit of a rough slog of it. They faced a lot of points against, so they haven't had the easiest luck in that conference, but they have been consistent on the numbers they've put up, and I think they're the 1 seed for a reason, that they can pull out the conference championship there.
Yeah, that all makes sense to me. If you guys are ready, we can transition over to the American. I think this is a pretty fascinating conference tournament, because you have FIU, in the 1 seed, and they play their basically their crosstown rivals. They're in South Florida, the FAU Owls in week 15, and that was a pretty good contest throughout the week. But then you find the FAU dropped all the way to the 5th seed in the American with that loss. So what jumps out to you guys on this bracket?
What for me, I think the matchup that we just saw, which was the matchup of the week between Florida International and FAU, we're going to potentially see that matchup again in roughly a week and a half or 2 weeks from now. That's what's going to stand out to me in this conference, is that rematch. That's what I'm looking forward to seeing.
Yeah, you mentioned that they dropped up to 5, right? Tulane was the 2 seed, and Tulane took an 0-2 this week to drop all the way down to 4. And instead of playing, the still ever dangerous, Delaware, I think they're the Blue Hens. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think they're the Blue Hens.
Yep.
Playing Delaware to having to face FAU in the first round is pretty brutal. No shot to Delaware. Delaware, I think, still finished with 22 wins, right? 22-8. So, no slouch there. As we've said time and time again, that's also another ranked team that will likely keep its ranking or close to it next week. To me, I think that Tulane FAU matchup is going to be the matchup of the first round here. Tulane and FAU are probably 2 and 3 in terms of scoring, if not 2 and 4, something like that in our conference, and very well run teams, as are a lot of them here. But it's funny because I was talking to Ram and a couple other people about potentially dropping my rivalry game here with FAU to avoid this exact scenario, right?
I can't believe you actually said it on air, by the way. I didn't know you were going to be honest about that.
I have no shame. Listen, the thought process was fair, but realistically, if I let FAU win that matchup, I'd be playing potentially Georgia Southern, right? So, which is, again, I think Georgia Southern finished 3rd or 4th in scoring, which isn't an easy matchup.
And is one of the teams that beat you, right?
No, the two teams that beat you were here. It was Marshall and USF. Yeah,
Marshall is the team that really fell off because they were in our top 25 early in the year. They
Marshall
were one of
got
the
into
higher
that top
scoring
25
points teams early in the year.
One win.
Oh, so your demons are out of the conference tournament.
Yeah,
you don't even have to see them again.
But honestly, though, I do think it's funny that how everything worked out. That potential matchup is there. I mean, Tulane's another, like I said, another really, really good team. East Carolina, right? They don't give themselves enough love in our chat on Discord. They like to always downplay their team, but as speak of the devil, they're sneaky good. They're sneaky good, and they get a really good matchup, right? And I say really good matchup, and I don't mean no disrespect to our commissioner, but Columbia's very pitching heavy, and those teams can be volatile as we've seen in the past. So I don't put it, I don't put it above East Carolina to knock Columbia out and move forward, but definitely a nice little shakeup with I think a 4-way tie at 24-6 between Georgia Southern, Columbia, Tulane, and FAU.
And you guys are doing points 4 as your second.
Yeah, we're doing points 4
as your second bid, right? So you've got to lock into the national tournament now.
Yeah, there was talk in the chat about like the same concept, right? I could potentially, give way to another team coming into the conference, but I'm too competitive for that, so that's not going to happen. If I lose like a man.
He wants that title.
No, I appreciate that honesty and that attitude. It's the same thing about Jeremy, that I expected that kind of attitude because your division has gotten real competitive overall. And we love that. We want to see competition. You mentioned the fact that there is a 4-way tie, 2, 3, 4, and 5 for 24-6. And it's not determined by points. As you can see that Florida Atlantic Owls are the 5th rank there, but they have the second most points in the conference, so they're also looking ahead as they have that kind of
most points in the entire league.
Right, so they have a bit of a safety too, because if they were, and this might be a painful thing, if they were to watch Chris win the conference championship, they would get in by default because of points. So they've got to be in the back of their head thinking, well, if it's not me, it's got to be Chris, right?
That's what I would think.
I don't want to say that, right? I don't want to downplay my team. I know we finished second overall in points, but beating the same team twice if we were to match up within 2 weeks isn't going to be easy. I like my chances, right? Like Jeremy said, I like the roster that I've constructed. I think I may not have the same volume as some of the other teams do in aces, but I like the balance that I have with the hitting. I think I finished second overall in hitting and around 13 or 14 in pitching. So I like the balance there to kind of fall back onto. But hey, again, we said it with the ACC, and it wouldn't shock me to see anybody realistically. And I'll say this with all due respect, aside from VCU, I think anybody 1 through 7 can win this conference.
And speaking of VCU, kind of have to give them a shout out because they kind of lurked there in the shadows and kind of came out of nowhere in the last couple of weeks to climb all the way into that 8th spot. Whereas they had been kind of completely, when we had done conference breakdowns in the weeks previous, we had been talking about teams like Marshall in that spot. And I'm blanking on a couple of the other names, but it seems like VCU just kind of came out of nowhere and overtook that spot. And qualified for the conference tournament.
Temple had that hot start to the season where they were at the top of it. Temple and Marshall, who had also seen the rankings in the top 25, both of them miss out and are going to be in the NIT. And VCU has gotten very little conversation, I can tell you very honestly, on our streams. And that's no disrespect to them, but now they are running into the juggernaut. So we talk about it all the time. I say it all the time. If you want to be the man, you got to beat the man. And there's nothing set in stone. There is nothing here that is a guarantee in this conference. I do agree with Chris that not only can a lot of teams in this conference make some waves in terms of winning their conference, but you don't really want to run into any of these teams in the Natty. It's going to be a pain in the ass. And speaking forward to the Natty, I haven't heard anything from you about this, Jeremy. So what are your thoughts on the American and seeing all of these big names that might be coming out and you might have to be looking forward to seeing in a good few weeks?
Yeah, I mean, there's good teams, and Tulane just came off a brutal loss, and FAU, of course, went the distance with Chris, and came out on the short end. Those are both two good teams, and Tulane could easily score 1,200 points next week. So I look at a matchup like that, and I think FAU definitely has the momentum, and Tulane coming off the brutal loss doesn't feel. I can't imagine he feels too good going into the conference. But these are good teams, and they have a lot of potential. So I agree with your assessment. I think everybody except for VCU really realistically could win this conference. And my guess, and what my gut would say is that I think Chris is going to take it. I think his team has the depth and has the strength and has so much power potential. What did you say, Ram? Yeah, the power suppressing and the power. He's got both of those in spades, and I think that's going to carry him through.
And
go ahead.
No, I was just Chris. I want to ask you off that, and this is just. I think I know your answer, but who do you see as your biggest threat to the conference title?
Honestly, because of how it ended up, I'm gonna still say FAU. Right, I don't feel super comfortable about having to face them again and potentially having to put up 1,300 points to beat them. Granted, I know that was one of I think the FAU posted on Discord that I think JC said they finished with the 4th highest scoring output all season and is still going to lose. So not his, just overall in the whole 128 team family that we have. So that's scary to look down on if I do make it out of the first round, and if FAU can beat Tulane, because Jeremy said, Tulane is another team that can put up, he could put up north of 1,000 points on any given week, as can a lot of these teams. So, without disrespecting anybody, Georgia Southern's another one that, again, me and Ram talked about this off air as well. Georgia Southern doesn't get a lot of love because he's not as, boisterous in the chat, but second place in what could be maybe the toughest or one of the toughest conferences is no joke. I do wanted to throw this out there before we go to Ash. I'm just kind of happy that we finished that FIU was able to finish second. Because and correct me if I'm wrong, if both Jeremy and I win our tournaments, we're on opposite ends of the bracket, correct? Because it's by points.
I believe so. Yeah, I believe so.
That's all I wanted to know. So,
well, not necessarily, because here's the kicker. So the seating is done in quadrants of 8. Well, not quadrants. I guess that's thirds. And so like the 8 teams that win their conference tournament get the top 8 seeds. So then within that group of 8, it'll be ranked 1 through 8 by points. And then the middle group will be the second bid from each conference, seeded 1 through, well, I guess that would be seeded 9 through 17. And then the third group is those final couple of qualifiers that we have, and those will be seeded 18 through 24. So like if you were to lose your conference tournament and get in that second group, your seed may.
Oh no, in that regard, yeah, for sure. I just mean in the case that both Jeremy and I win, I don't have to worry about the almighty DBU to the finals. Got it. Okay.
Are the points as far as the seeds and the natty go? Are the points based off of points in the postseason?
Just the regular season. So the points are locked in for any seeding purposes.
Okay.
Which we'll need to download and save that tonight.
Awesome.
Oh, that's fun, and a lot of big numbers, by the way, here in the American, and that also speaks to the fact that even if you don't win that conference tournament, there are going to be guys here who are expecting that bid, not out of anything out of not deserving it, because they do have a ton of wins and points. It's almost guaranteed that we're going to see 3 teams out there, so it's going to be fun, if not 4, right? We've talked about this before, so it's going to be really interesting to see which of these guys. You could see somebody losing the conference tournament and still run into them in the natty within your own conference, Chris, right? And I'm sure that doesn't exactly feel great, because you've been around these guys all season. You know who the dangers are. You know that any of these teams can pop off, and I think it's really exciting in that regard. It's not fun all the time, but it's extremely exciting, if we're being honest, because of the fact that you look at real contenders out of here. Your first week matchup against VCU, I'm going to assume that you think that you've got, I'm not going to say in the bag, but you're favoring yourself for.
Sure, of course. I mean,
right?
I think it's always scary looking at the other side of the roster and seeing Shohei Ohtani. But Shohei aside, I do think, as Jeremy said, I have enough depth and enough power bats to combat it in terms of just sheer volume. So I don't want to say I feel like it's a shoo-in, because it's realistically not. I lost to two teams that aren't here. So, but I do definitely feel good about this first round matchup. Not so much the second round, but first round matchup for sure.
And here's what I will say, though, and this is both to tease you, but also something I've seen. Don't you have that fear in the back of your head that you beat the team in the regular season and when you face them in the playoffs, it doesn't work out? Because I have that type of fear. I've had that happen where I've been on both sides of it, where I got washed in the regular season. I met them in the semis or the finals, and I was able to pull out that win because for some reason, just like real life, it's hard to do it against the same team. It's just not that easy,
Hard to
right?
beat the same team twice. That's the old the old cliche.
Yeah, and so I'm sure you have that worry in the back of your head.
Yeah, twice, and it's got to happen twice in the span of 3 weeks if it does happen, right? Like if we're going to face each other, it's going to be 2 out of the last 3 matchups. So we'll see. I mean, again, I'm happy that I was able to get that, natty bid secured with the points. But anything can happen in the conference tournament. I'm not gonna feel confident and say like, oh, I'm gonna win. I do think I have the best team in this conference, so I do like my chances. But again, tough place to be in.
By the way,
yeah, and I'm looking at this bracket, and
here.
5 of the top 20 points for teams in the entire league are in this bracket. So, I mean, it's like the pool of death.
And there's a potential one of those teams doesn't even make it to the end, right?
Yeah.
There's no guarantee we're going to get all 5 of those in, so we'll see.
We saw John asking here, by the way, about these final bids, and then DBU was able to give an answer here. So the final bids are determined by thus the best season record of the remaining teams who did not make the Natty, and then the top scoring teams of the remaining teams that did not make the Natty. So we're going to see 8 bids that come from outside of the 2 guaranteed. And that's a tie-in to right here because, Ash, you just talked about the points in this division. There's a guarantee that there's going to be 3, if not 4, out of the American.
Yeah, absolutely, which will be interesting. Let's get some predictions from you guys. I'll start us off here. I think your final 4 in this conference will be FIU and FAU and a rematch there on the top half. And then I'm going to say Georgia Southern and Columbia. So it's all chalk for me in the final 4 of this conference. And then I will say that Georgia Southern takes it over FIU in the championship round.
That's a risky thing to do with Chris sitting right across from you.
I know.
Chris is sitting there like off screen. I know that he looks like he just got drafted to an MLB team in his background, but what you can't see off screen is his voodoo doll, and he might put Louisville on there, Ash. He might turn around and start cheering for Duke. He might rip the shirt off and have a Duke Blue Devils jersey. You sure you want to cross that devil on air?
I will say, I am taking my own, life in my hands by saying that, but I also will say that FAU, by virtue, Jeremy, whenever he mentions that second group of 4 being the top 4 scoring teams not in the field yet, FAU being 7th in the country in points for, could very well have already locked in a spot to the national tournament as well. We'll have to see how it plays out, but in my opinion, they're probably safe as well. So there you have 2 teams. And if you were to have a final round of FIU and Georgia Southern in the championship, or any of these other 4 teams, I guess, so FIU versus one of the bottom 4 teams on this bracket could benefit the conference for somebody to take one for the team there.
It's definitely not going to be me.
It's not going to be Chris, and it's not going to be JC, and I don't think it's going to be Georgia, Columbia, or Tulane. And Jesse's a real nice guy, but I think he'd like to try to win too. So I don't know if we're going to see much sandbagging going on. In terms of predictions, though, I honestly think the biggest threat, just based on the way the luck of the draw works, to Chris is going to be the Florida Atlantic Owls because he just beat them. Because I've seen that kind of bullshit happen all the time where you beat them in the regular season and then somehow they edge it out at the end of it. So that's the only threat. But gun to my head, I do think that Chris has been consistent enough that he's able to get through this tournament. I certainly think he's beating VCU. No disrespect to them. I think that, if FAU beats Tulane, then there's going to be some worry, right? If they start putting up some big numbers that got through Tulane, I know Chris is going to be worried whether he admits it out loud or not. I think that's the biggest threat there. But I do see some way, shape, or form Florida, FAU, and Florida International, Florida Atlantic, and probably Georgia as those three that are going to get in. Columbia, I respect their team a lot, but they're real pitching heavy, and they're due for another one of those clunker weeks. So we'll see what happens if the East Carolina Pirates can sneak one out there. I think it's very possible.
Yeah, what I like about the odds here is that if you're in the bottom part of that bracket, and if you're Columbia, East Carolina, Georgia Southern, or Delaware, if you can just get to your conference final, you got a shot. And I think taking out Tulane, FAU, and FIU from those teams to compete with, that automatically raises your odds of having a shot at winning the thing. So that is in their favor. I will take Florida International winning this thing. I think I'm saying the same thing as you guys. I have the top 4 seeds all advancing to the next round. I think the interesting matchup, like I mentioned earlier, is going to be the 2 Florida teams battling it out. And I ultimately, whoever wins that matchup, I think will take the conference title. But I'm going to pick Florida International.
Chris, did we get yours? I'm sorry.
I mean, to not bet on myself, I'm gonna go FIU Georgia Southern in the final, and I'm gonna give the edge to Georgia Southern because I'd hate to say that I'm gonna win and then not win it. I don't want that pressure, so I'm just throwing that out there.
Well, moving right along then to the big. I guess they don't call themselves the Big Ten anymore, but historically called the Big Ten. So this has been an interesting league to me, just because of the fact that you've had a few different replacement owners come in and take over teams. One of them being Colorado, and that team was kind of left for dead at one point. I wouldn't say left for dead, but they were around 8th, 9th, 10th, something like that. But the replacement owner came in and made a lot of moves and did a lot of things for that team and got them up into the 5 seed at the end of the day here for the conference tournament. And so that was the first thing that jumped out at me when I put this bracket together. Penn State, one of our longtime viewers, if you're out there, give us your thoughts on the Big Ten tournament and your predictions. Varno there, Indiana State, with a great season and winning the regular season title. There's a lot of parity in this conference as well.
Yeah, I look at this and look at the teams like Indiana State and Penn State, 2 teams that have been ranked in the top 25 for a lot of the season. I think they're both probably considered a bit underdogs compared to some of the other teams, but they are teams that have been consistent, and I see those 2 teams standing out above the rest.
I got the feeling that Varno and Indiana State are worried, because Peter representing Rutgers had the inside scoop on how to beat Indiana State, the only one to do it in the regular season. And Penn State and Rutgers have been doing a lot of conversing and talking, and they might be sharing some thoughts about how to beat Indiana State. And that might be the best time to do it because I'm thinking that, as much as I hate to admit it because I have a rivalry with this man, I think this is the time for Penn State Nittany Lions, man. I think this is the time they put it together and they're able to do it because Indiana, with the Pacers and Caitlin Clark and all that stuff in real life, it's like they said back in the other day, they've had it too good for too long. And I think that time has come where I think that the Penn State Nittany Lions are going to find a way to, off the back of their fleecing of some other people and some trades that extremely benefited them, are going to find a way to get through this conference. So I'm going to say that this is going to be Penn State Nittany Lions winning this conference, and they're getting their automatic bid through the conference tournament.
Yeah, I mean, Ash mentioned the parity, right? After Indiana State and Penn State, it it really, aside those two schools aside, right? Three through 8 is a pretty tight group. Just off overall points scored. Yeah, and Andrew says that, and which is a Penn State owner. It's funny because you're looking at it. The difference between them, if you half their points total, is like 100 points.
Yes.
Right. So that is a really, really tight margin. I know that the matchup between them was tight. I believe that their points against is also under it's like under 50 points in their margin. So those are two very similar teams, right? They mentioned it in roster construction, but also in their output, which is obviously synonymous with one to another. So I do think this is a 2-horse race in this conference, right? No disrespect to anybody else. I just feel like both those teams are a threshold ahead of the field. So I'd be shocked to see anybody aside from one of those two win it. It's great that they ended up 1 and 2, so they don't have to meet till the final. We get a nice big Penn State in 5. But I'm gonna ride with Ram here and go Penn State. I think they want that rematch and they want it badly, right? I think they don't want it any other way. They don't want Nebraska, they don't want Minnesota, they don't want Colorado, they want Indiana State, and they want to be crowned champs, beating the best. So give me Penn State here.
Yeah, I will take Indiana State. I mean, they've been the class of the league, so I'm going to go chalk. I do think a sleeper team could be Minnesota. That's a team that has at times flown under the radar, but scored some decent amount of points at times. It's been a kind of a consistent team throughout the year. So if there is a sleeper team, I would say that's Minnesota.
I'll take Indiana State as well. I really think it's been kind of a coin flip for Indiana State versus Penn State as far as the season has gone. But they've earned it with only 2 losses this season, so I'll go with Indiana State.
I do want to echo what Ash was saying, by the way, and shout out the Buffs because that team was taken over after an abandonment midseason, and here they are as a 5th seed. So I love the fact that they turned around and they pushed, and they didn't just sell off their entire team. Really love when people do that. I love that they gave it a shot. They're being rewarded with the dark horse, as Ash calls the Minnesota Golden Gophers. So it's not an easy matchup, but they can figure something out, and they might cause some trouble too. So respect for them to sticking through it. Love that they did, and I am going to be paying attention to this conference. However, I kind of echo what the boys are saying there. This is a little bit top heavy, in my opinion. I know that you can see like you've got 22K and 21K out of the Wisconsin, Minnesota, Colorado, but you got 26, almost 27 from both Penn State and Indiana. They've been consistent all year. I do think the cream rises to the top here, and these are the guys that are going to do some damage. But razor-thin margins, as Chris pointed out mathematically. So I'm sure both of them are nervous and not confident in either way. I just want to see it. And we won't see it towards the end, but I do think we'll see that as the final.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense to me, being the two best teams all along. So that would definitely not be a surprise to see that. I think DBU will like the next conference that we transition to, get to see his team there on the one line with Dallas Baptist, #1 overall in the Big 12 conference tournament, facing a team that snuck into the field, Oklahoma State. They were a team that hadn't been in their top 8 for a while. And there in the last couple of weeks made a push and made that conference tournament. But this the first round matchup to me that is the most intrigue is that bottom one with the #2 seed Baylor facing Kansas State, because Kansas State was a team that was one of our final undefeated teams. They were one of the final 4 or 5 teams to be undefeated in our league. So could they have a resurgence here in the conference tournament? I mean, everybody's 0-0 when you get to the postseason. So is this a team that could get a resurgence and make a run? We'll see. Another dangerous team for Baylor on that bottom half is TCU. They've been a team that's been really dangerous all season long. So I think this will be a very highly competitive. I think when you get into that second round, any of the teams remaining could win this thing.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I really find it interesting. Illinois State, it's been a similar not as dramatic story as Andrew's Blue Devils. But Illinois State for a while didn't seem like the team that they are now, right? They became buyers fairly quickly after the start of the season and started stockpiling just absolute talent, top to bottom. They're the number one offensive team in terms of hitting stats in the league for a reason. So I think that's obviously not at the same threshold because Dallas, Jeremy's team is just that much better than everybody else. But that's not an easy second round, right? Having to go face Illinois State. So there's definitely there should, at least in my mind, should be a slight worry there if I'm Jeremy, right? I didn't want to play Illinois State in the second round if I could have avoided it. But I don't want to go chalk, but this is I guess the most obvious chalk for me in terms of the cream rises to the top here and Dallas Baptist takes it. But I was, and I'll say this again on air, I have no problem. I was really hopeful that the Roadrunners were going to get in because the Roadrunners had a couple weeks here in the last month that were pretty strong weeks. So I figured, in the hopes that Jeremy didn't get a bye week in the Natty, that the Roadrunners would be able to climb in and get a major 8-1 upset. But no, I mean, again, all jokes aside, this is Dallas's Baptist conference to lose, and I'd be, again, aside from Illinois State, Baylor we know has been for the most part second or third in scoring all year. I think they're going to end up finishing third or fourth, so that's not an easy matchup either if that's the 1-2 in the finals. But give me Dallas Baptist.
Ram, what's your thoughts here?
A little while ago, a couple of years back, there was a beef. This is before Kendrick and Drake, where Kendrick was talking about it. They talked about the big three, and he says it's just the big me. Yeah, that's where Dallas Baptist is right now. I look at the Big 12 as the big three, and that's the Dallas Baptist Patriots, the Baylor, and the Illinois State Redbirds. No disrespect to TCU. I think they're a great team, and I think they did good, but the numbers don't lie, baby. I mean, TCU was about 10,000 behind Dallas Baptist. They're about 4,000 behind Baylor and 3,000 behind the Illinois State Redbirds. This is the big three, not the Big 12. And DBU says this ain't the big three. This is the big me, baby. This is all Dallas Baptist here. That's the way I look at it. Look, he's got a bye week in the first part of the tournament, and he knows it. He won't say it because he's real respectful and nice, but he won't say it. But that's what it is. I don't really see the idea of anyone that isn't Dallas, Baylor, and Illinois really causing waves, fear, anything like that. Baylor's got a great team. Illinois has been able to be a second-half team, which is huge. TCU is not a bye week for anybody. They're a tough face, right? But at the end of the day, I mean, if TCU advances off beating the North Central Cardinals, then who do they turn around and they face? That would be Baylor? Is that how,
Yeah, Baylor or Kansas State.
Right? And there's no way that I'm taking TCU over Baylor. And there's no disrespect to TCU. It's a really tough conference, right? But I'm telling you that it's, again, big three, big me. I don't see any reason for me to think that after a 30-0 season, a Buttermaker win, 34,000 points. I mean, it felt like he really wasn't in threat outside of a few days in a week, let alone an entire week. I think that he's going to walk through the conference and take his number 1-2 going into the Natty, and then we're going to see where the danger comes in.
Before we head on over to Jeremy, you mentioned the TCU Baylor matchup. Baylor just dropped two games this week too. So if TCU can get Baylor on the right week, don't be shocked. Yeah, there's about a 4,000 or 5,000 point gap there. So I'd still pick Baylor, but TCU can sneak into that conference final for sure.
I mean, I also talk about points against as a big thing here. And if you pull over to the Fantrack side, Ash doesn't have to do it, but this is for our own sake. Out of those top 6 teams, TCU has the least points against, right? And to Baylor's credit, by the way, he's faced more points against than DBU. Now, part of that is being in a conference with DBU, but TCU has had some people on weeks that may not have been their best weeks in the world. And it's, anybody can beat anybody in this conference on any given week. We know this, right? Especially from these top 4 teams. But at the end of the day, if I'm laying my betting lines down, I'm saying we're looking at Dallas, we're taking a jump down the Grand Canyon, and then we're looking at Baylor, and we're looking at Illinois, and then the conversation ends there.
I did want to point out that I feel pretty comfortable in saying this team has Dallas Baptist, Baylor, and Illinois State, all 3 going to the national tournament.
Absolutely.
The conference has determined that the top point getter out of the non-conference championship will get the second bid. So you're looking at Baylor, if they were to not win the conference tournament, is locked into the national tournament. And then you've got Illinois State as the 10th most points in the entire country on the season. So when you talk about that third group of bids for the national tournament, 4 of those bids going to the highest scoring teams, not yet in the field, I think that Illinois State has to feel pretty comfortable about the fact that they will likely get into the national tournament.
All right, so Doc, what do you got for us, man? Talk to us about your conference here specifically. Fears, confidence, any type of trash talk you probably don't want to throw out there because you're too respectful. But what do you got going on here? And tell me about it. I know you're going to say nice things about your conference like you always do, but give us something for fun here. What's on your mind?
I'll start with some trash talk. I mean, 34,000 points speaks for itself. I'll just leave it there. I feel great about my team. I think I've got a shot at running this entire thing, and we're going to just hope for the best on that. As far as the other teams in the conference, I think TCU has a shot of making the Natty by winning the third pool of bids for the best record of remaining teams. I think that would be how he's more than likely going to be able to qualify. Being that he's only had 6 losses this season, I think he's got a shot at making that. Of course, that depends on the other 16 teams and how they, who gets in and who's left. But we could potentially get TCU in there with Illinois State, Baylor, and myself into the Natty. But we'll see. Out of the breakdowns of these, of course, I like myself. Now, Oklahoma State just took down the mighty Baylor. Baylor has been second in points the majority of the season, but Chris just overcame that in this magical week, and Baylor having a really rough week this week. So Oklahoma State's going to be hoping to kind of do that twice, 2 weeks in a row. He had a total of 9 pitching starts this week. I'm feeling pretty good about my beast of 25 to 30 guys I'm going to be rolling out there. But that said, the others, Illinois State, Chris, I think it was you mentioned that kind of looking at that team and seeing he's on my side of the bracket. I don't like that much. Yeah, he's a really good owner. He works a lot of good trades. I'm kind of grateful that the trade deadline has already come and gone by the time these things start, so that people can't be making deals in the middle of the week to try and overcome stuff. But he is a good team, and that is going to be a tough matchup for me. I will go ahead and say I think TCU and Baylor, just going with those higher seeds, I think they all advance. I see Baylor bouncing back big from the big loss that he had this week. I think he's, he just had a rough week or at the wrong time. But I think he's going to be cruising into the conference final here, and I'm hoping to be the one there to try and win it again.
Jeremy, you touched on something that's I wanted to run by Ash before we move on to the next one. TCU's 24-6. What's the tiebreaker for the team for that third and fourth threshold for the teams? For example, I'll speak for my conference because I don't know how many other 24-6 teams there are, but we have 4 24-6 teams. So between those, what's the tiebreaker amongst the same record? Is it points? It's
the first tiebreaker is always head to head.
Okay.
So like in this situation, you've got TCU and Illinois State both at 24-6. Which means, and I'd have to go back to confirm, but according to the tiebreaker setup, that means that TCU beat Illinois State in the regular season. In your case, if there's multiple teams all tied with the same record, what it'll do is create like a mini conference. So if there's 4 teams, if somebody went 4-0 amongst that, then they would get the first spot. If there's another team 3-1, they'd be second, and so on down the line.
No, but what I meant was when deciding those natty bids, right? So when deciding between TCU, Illinois, let's say DBU wins, and it's Illinois State and TCU duking it out with just based off records. And then on the American side, you have FAU, Tulane, Georgia Southern, all with the same records amongst them. Is there a tiebreaker that decides who those natty bids go to?
The tiebreaker for that would be points.
Points. Okay.
Yeah.
Got
it. Ram, lead us off.
Oh boy. I'll lead off by saying you best hope, Ash, that suspended game does not cause me to somehow not get into the natty. That's what I'm gonna say. Because
it allowed you to be the 6 instead of the 5, in which case you wouldn't face Rhode Island until the final.
Yeah, but I'm not running from the big names. If I win the conference, I've got to face Rhode Island at some point. What am I supposed to do?
Right, but losing to them in the final at least gives you money, whereas if you lose to them in the semifinal, it doesn't.
Playing Butler and then Bryant.
Yeah, I mean, it's not so. And here's the thing about it that's really important, because Chris was just touching on this, right? I'm 22-8, and I should be ahead of Iona at 23. I have more points than Iona, but at the end of the day, it's one of those things where that one win, you said something to me that was really funny. You said you don't want to see the wrong teams get into the playoffs. If I miss off this, oh baby. But let's put that aside. Let's look here at the Big East. I mean, first off, respect to these guys. I've kind of bonded with them throughout the year because you've got your own personal conference chat, just like I'm sure Chris, Jeremy, and Ash can speak to. You start to bond with your conference, right? Because at the end of the day, you're competing with each other, but you start talking to each other. You start getting to know each other and liking each other. So we've got our own friendly rivalries here. I got rewarded here I was either going to face Brian or Butler, right? One of the Bulldogs here. And that was no easy matchup. This is going to be such a slog. I am not looking forward to it because I beat Butler in the regular season. I gave them one of their losses. And now that gives me that fear that they're going to come back from the dead and catch me in the playoffs. So I'm not necessarily looking forward to it. But at the end of the day, I've just got to score a whole bunch of points and win regardless of who's in front of me. I'm being playful about it, but I'm looking forward to this because I've got Butler right off. I know that I can beat them because I've done it, right? And Brian is a friend and an extreme challenge as well. Just about the same amount of points as Butler. So me and Cretan are basically set up there where I'm kind of glad that I'm not facing Bryant, but Butler's no walk in the park at all just because they've got a little bit less. Rhode Island's probably feeling really good about the fact that they were undefeated, and they've been having their little fun about it. 100 trades as well, 30 wins. They didn't make it through the Buttermaker undefeated, as DBU has pointed out to me, and I had to issue a stat correction. Technically, they were not the only undefeated team because DBU can say that Rhode Island did lose in the Buttermaker. But at the end of the day, I mean, I have a lot of faith in movement out of this conference. Whoever gets the natty out of here can cause some trouble. Now, we voted for most points to get through if they don't make the natty, and if that doesn't, so if Rhode Island makes the natty, essentially the person who faces them in the final is going to get a bid out of us. So Ash's point if I can get to the final against Rhode Island, I get guaranteed into the natty. That might be my only way in at 22-8. I might have taken too many losses. So
the other way would be to win the league.
Yeah, so that's it. My brain is sitting here thinking, I've got to win the conference.
And the 8 teams that win their conference tournament, they also get a bye in the national championship tournament. So.
Yeah, well, screw a bye. I just want to make sure I make it to the natty. If I can make it somehow, I'm happy. I always say this. I say it in Discord all the time. Just get to the dance. I made it to the dance, and I'm here. So I've got to knock out a top 15 team to get there. I look forward to that because that's exactly what I should be asking for, is a chance to do something on the national stage. It's going to be fun. I'm looking forward to it. I'm hoping that my guys clean up and I get a clean bill of health when everything starts right after the All-Star game. These next 4 days or so are going to be extremely anxious as I try to figure out what's going on. But I'm excited, and I'm looking forward to it. I'm happy to have a shot to actually do some damage here. And Rhode Island beat me towards the end of the regular season, so God knows that if I get to that final with them, they're going to have that same fear we're talking about, that maybe I catch them on a bad week and I do something. I have faith in my boys. I know that I scored more than the guys I'm tied with there in Iona, and I was catching up on Binghamton towards the end. So there are 6 teams here that we do feel like can do some damage with varying levels of outward confidence and vocal trash talk and things like that. You won't get much from Brian and Butler and Binghamton, Iona, and trash talk. They're very nice gentlemen. Rhode Island and I, maybe not so much so. So we're going to see how that works out. But I look forward to it. And I'm interested in terms of the matchups here. Oneonta talked very openly in our Big East chat about trying to give Rhode Island a run for their money. I do think that Rhode Island, Bryant come out pretty seamlessly going through that first round. Binghamton, Iona, looking forward to that rematch. They're pretty much even teams. Binghamton was a bit more of a better second half team. So I think that Binghamton makes it out. I mean, if I beat Butler, it's a long path for me no matter what, but I'm hoping that I don't get caught by that curse where I beat him in the regular season and I can't beat him in the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, this is another one of those conferences that's, really balanced, right? There's a lot of talent. You mentioned a lot of talent, pretty much 1 through 6. I, again, echo with you that, any one of those teams could probably win. But for me, I think that the team that, aside from, Rhode Island going 30-0 and leading the conference in points, a team that I really, really feel strongly about are the Bryant Bulldogs, right? They're just behind Rhode Island by like 1,000, and you may say, 1,000 is a lot. Not in this league. It's not throughout the course of 15 weeks. It's not a big gap. So to not go chalk, I think, and sorry to you, Ram, you're my boy, but I like Bryant to come out of this conference as the champs, right? I do think, I do think you beat Butler. And then again, Bryant's just one of those teams, like we talked about FAU, we talked about Duke. They put up over 1,000 points this past week, right? For 5-6 days of the week, Bryant was top 2 in scoring for the week. I'm not entirely sure where he finished, but I can feel pretty confident saying they were top 10 in the entire league. So they're getting hot at the right moment, right? And if you play them, you're playing them in 2 weeks. So there's not a lot of time for them to cool off. That being said, again, 1 through 6 can win this conference. And I again, without disrespecting Rhode Island, I think Rhode Island's not coming out as a champ. They have their spot, right? They're making it either way. But I think Rhode Island was a product of a little bit of luck. We've mentioned it before in terms of their matchups. So give me Bryant to come out of the Big East as the champs.
Yeah, Bryant actually finished right behind Chris in the standings this week. Bryant was 2nd overall in the points. I'm going to jump on that too and call that I think Bryant's going to take this bracket. I think, Rhode Island is due a lot of respect. He not only has he gone undefeated in the regular season, but he has also made a lot of trades to improve his team, especially approaching the trade deadline. I think he's got a strong team heading into the Natty, and he's going to be a force to be reckoned with. But I like Bryant. If Bryant and Rhode Island had played this week, Bryant would have won by about 100 points. So I'm going to roll with him at being the victor here. I do agree. I think UConn and Butler is the matchup of the week in this initial round. I think that's going to be the most interesting one to watch. And, of course, depending on how it goes, listening to Ram next week is going to be a lot of fun to hear.
I will say also, speaking on behalf of Rhode Island, which I would rarely do, but I severely doubt that he has at all considered any ounce of sandbagging as well. There's no way, as much as he jokes and he talks, there's no shot he's not looking to run roughshod and kill this conference. So I don't see any opportunity. By the way, Oneonta's been joking around. Rhode Island's been joking in our own Big East chat that he's due for a loss and that his team is too thin. And we don't know, right? We don't know if he has been, but at the end of the day, 30 wins, he's there. I just know he's not going to sandbag. You're going to see him start his guys and do his best. And I will echo, though, to you guys' point, I do think Bryant gets very little love in the overall scheme of things because of the conference they're in, but they have a legitimate chance to win the conference.
I feel in this league there are 7 teams that could win this conference tournament. It is one of the more wide open conference tournaments that we have. Rhode Island is undefeated, but they have normally I don't like to look at points against. but they have one of the easiest paths to being undefeated.
I've gotten to you.
They haven't even broken 20,000 points against. Like, everybody that faces them has the worst week of the season. Like,
Rams clipping that and just saving
Well,
it.
no, because I have been talking about, and it's just one specific stat, right? And it comes off funny, but at the end of the day, I talked about this in the Big East Discord chat, where there were 3 weeks where I was like, in a row, where I was like, oh yeah, I would have beaten Rhode Island this week, but I guarantee you when I go up against them, it's not going to happen because I just know how this works. But everyone just couldn't. You can look at the points against. I mean, every single one of 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 faced a decent chunk more points against than Rhode Island did. So, and again, that's not saying they're a
He
bad
finished
team at
first
all.
in points against. He has the worst points against in the entire conference. Not just those 8, the entirety of the conference.
Right. So that's
and he was toward the bottom in the whole league, like not just conference. Like, it's just wild to me.
And he knows it too, though. But he also knows he's got a good team. He also doesn't want to be disrespected.
He's also scored 28,000 points.
Right.
So
He would love to have nothing but just a cruise week where he puts up like 1,200 against Oneonta, so he can just tell everybody, yeah, this is what you're talking about, right? Like, he wants us. I mean, this is a guy that a couple weeks ago was like messaging us saying, hey, if you want me to beat DBU, you got to send my pictures this way. And if I win, you guys get a free entry next year. But and it's true, right? It is true at the end of the day, but you got to think about how long this goes, where what happens where he doesn't face someone on their worst week, right? And I do think Brian has been sitting silent on the sidelines, kind of hoping to say, I'm going to do some damage here. Of course, I've got to believe in my own team and hope that we can have a little fun there. I don't know how far it's going to go. I will say, for the sake of content, as Jeremy says, man, it would be funny if I won. But if not, I promise you I'll still be here. I'm not running even if I lose.
I have my prediction here is that we're going to see some craziness in this conference tournament. It's going to be one of the few that is not chalk at all. We're going to have a final round of Binghamton versus UConn, and the Huskies are going to take it. There you go.
Thanks. Your Venmo will be in the on the app shortly. I appreciate that. I gotta be honest with you, to anybody out there who listens to, and this is certainly for the sake of, I'm curious. I don't think I make it out of this conference as the winner. I need to make the Natty, but I don't know if that gets through to my players. If anybody watching actually thinks that, I am sincerely curious. Outside of Ash, if anybody thinks I can win this conference, only because it would be really fun for content.
Listen, at the end of the day, out of all the characters that we have on this Discord, right, in this 128 team league, I think the person that I would feel would be the most obnoxious is Rhode Island. So
it would be Duke. If Duke won the Natty,
no
he would be the most obnoxious person on this Discord.
But the thing is, we know he's obnoxious. Imagine Rhode Island getting to say he finished 40-0, whatever it is that he finishes. I don't want to find out.
Did everybody get their predictions on this conference?
Yeah, I said Bryant. I believe Jeremy did as well. I don't remember if Ram did.
I do think Rhode Island wins our conference tournament. I do think that he finds a way to knock it out. But if I had to pick a dark horse or someone that I think is going to do something special, I'm going to agree with you and say Bryant, because I do think he doesn't get enough love and respect. I would love it to be me. I would love it to be me, just because of the sake of I'd be able to come on here and freak out and have a lot of fun. But right now, I'm just going to see if I can get past Butler again.
Yeah, we need shirtless Ram on stream.
Peter says he believes in you, Ram, but the question is, do you believe in Joe Hendry?
What? Of course I believe in Joe Hendry. Why? Peter was making fun of me like half hour ago for having the sunglasses on, but I appreciate the belief in there. I think it's gonna be fun. I don't know, man. I wish Rhode Island was here, because I'd want his like brand of sarcasm and commentary just to talk about this. He was already telling us that he's going to lose to Oneonta in the first round, but even if he does, he's making it into the Natty guaranteed. So he's safe no matter what. Let's see, boys. It's starting in a couple days.
This Pac-12 bracket is interesting. It has really good teams with the lower end of the seat. Like that, man.
And Washington
USC is
is
a
one of
good
those
team.
teams that I think is sneaky good in this. I talked about a sleeper with the Big Ten. The Pac-12 here, I think Washington could be the dark horse sleeper in this bracket. They have at times been very good in this league. And if somebody's going to pull off an early upset, I think you could see Washington knock off Cal at some point in that second round.
Absolutely. Washington, you could even USC. USC does get the media darling Long Beach State. Shout out to Matt at Encase. But, you know, USC is no slouch either. Almost 24 and a half, like 24,000 points, 21-9. So it's not a very rewarding matchup for a 3 seed either. So this is going either way.
Yeah, Long Beach State, if we remember, was the Cinderella run in the Buttermaker for quite some time.
Mm-hmm.
And they have made the win now type of moves going forward. They even went as far to trade a sophomore Jordan, right? So there are solid teams. For me, this is definitely a 4-up. And I do think USC is a solid team. I do think that like Utah can sneak in a few weeks or so, but I think Cal, UCLA, Long Beach, and Washington are going to do the damage here. I have a lot of respect for Cal, and I do think that they're a great owner. I also want to acknowledge the fact that UCLA was barely behind them in points, less than 1,000. So I don't give them enough credit on air, and they could absolutely do some damage. This might be – I know this is an interesting bracket. I agree with you, Chris, but it also might be one of those where we just see 1 and 2 towards the final.
I mean, 1 and 2 are definitely the class of the conference. You know, you're right about that. Long Beach State doesn't fall too far behind in points scored either. But I want to see a little bit of chaos, right? I don't want to see all the 1 and 2s that are already going to the dance make it to the final. Let's have some fun. So for me, give me Wash. I'm gonna go ahead and say I wouldn't be shocked to see Washington State, USC in the final, to be completely honest with you. You know, USC has a tough matchup here, round 1 against Long Beach State. And then, you know, the Aztecs are another team. I played them in the Buttermaker, and they gave me a bit of a scare. They're very hit and miss. Some weeks they'll put up 900 points, and then they'll put up 400 the one after. So, you know, but I do think UCLA clears that matchup. But give me Washington State, USC in the final, and give me an 8 seed to win the Pac-12.
Yeah, I like it. I think that first matchup of the week is going to be Long Beach versus USC. I can also see that the winner of that going on to win the whole thing for this conference championship. I'm going to go with Long Beach. I think they've been pretty consistent through the season. I do like Cal, and I can see Long Beach and Cal facing up in this conference final. But give me the 3 seed in Long Beach for this one.
Ram, did you have a prediction here?
I will say I do think the upset of the first round, if we're going to see one, might be USC Long Beach. I do think the USC gets a ton of points on the board at any given week, and if they put up a big number, it might be hard for Long Beach to sneak by. I think my heart says Cal just because I like him so much, but I think that UCLA is going to be one of those that sneaks through, and Cal's going to get their bid to the Natty anyway. I just feel like it's going to play out that way, so I think this is going to be UCLA. With all my respect in the world to Cal, and I think he gets into his natty anyway.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Is if there was an upset, USC could do. I mean, they've scored 24,000 points on the season, and just sort of fell back to 6 in their conference. Despite that, I mean, they've outscored Utah, the team ahead of them, by 3,000 points.
Wow.
So
yeah,
that's pretty wild to me.
Yeah, Utah's had some up and down weeks, and if you notice, the win streaks are not really super confident because they don't really account for league average. But Cal's won a lot of their matchups. They're probably one of the hottest teams going into it overall because they're consistent. But USC has been winning a lot down the line to get back to the point where they are. And they're being rewarded with Long Beach State, which is no easy path, a team that has scored more than them. But I'm not going to count them out. And no disrespect to Long Beach, who has proved us wrong before, but I do think USC can make a nice run. I think UCLA is going to do some damage here. And again, they were just a little bit off Cal and really only one matchup away because of 2 wins and losses there. I think that they can make it out of this conference as the champ.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. This is going to be a fun one to watch. We've got 2 conferences left to go, so bear with me. And the next one up will be the SEC, which I think is another really good conference. That their conference tournament is going to be wide open as well. You've got Tennessee, the 1 seed. Texas A&M kind of rose from the dead mid-season, where they were down around like 12th or 13th in their conference at one point, and then rose all the way up in to make the conference tournament. In advance to face Tennessee there in the first round. The first round matchup, this one has a first round matchup that I'm very intrigued with, and that's Texas and Mississippi State, 2 teams that have been off and on in our top 25 throughout the year. So that first round there is going to be very interesting. I do think in the end you're going to see LSU and Tennessee in the final of this one, and I'll say LSU takes it.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. This is a really, really strong conference as well. We have a new number 1, right? LSU had been locked into that 1 seed for what seemed to be the entirety of the season. They took an 0-2, correct, Jeremy? They lost 2 games this week, correct?
Yep.
Yeah, so they took an 0-2 to drop them to 2, and I actually think that helped them, right? Aside from the automatic bid, right? Well, LSU realistically is going in no matter what. I would assume if it's based off of points. I don't really want to.
Yes, I would agree with you that I'm pretty sure that both Tennessee and LSU are safe
getting in regardless. But they do. I think they get a easier route to that conference championship. Because Texas Mississippi State, that's Ash mentioned it. That's a really good first round matchup. That 2 high scoring teams that are in the top 25. Kentucky's a team that's kind of fallen out. They were in the top 10 for a really long time. So I'm not saying that Kentucky's an easy matchup for LSU if they were to face them. But I think LSU came out on top by losing this conference and giving themselves an easier path. That being said, I'm going to agree with Ash and go LSU, Tennessee probably, and go LSU as a champ.
I like Mississippi State in this bracket a lot. I think the first round is going to end up being Tennessee, Mississippi State, Kentucky, and LSU. I think LSU rebounds from the really brutal loss they faced this week to bounce back and get to this conference championship. I think the tough matchup is going to be Tennessee versus Mississippi State. Tennessee has been hot, and I think that they will probably duke it out and win, but Mississippi State's going to put up a tough match. This conference, the matchup this week was Mississippi State versus LSU, and Mississippi came out 300 points on top of LSU. This is one of those brackets where I literally can say, I think any one of these contenders here could end up taking the thing. I don't think there's a lock-in team that's definitely going to win it. But I think Mississippi State, Tennessee, or LSU are going to come out on top of it. Any of them can do it. I'm going to go with Mississippi State just as the long shot.
I like that because, I mean, we're talking about it here, and I'm going to echo it. That Texas-Mississippi State matchup is going to be one of the more compelling matchups of the entire playoff series right now because they are both ranked teams. They've been going at it. Texas slowed down a little bit. Mississippi State picked up a little bit, right? Kentucky's not ranked, but had seeded in front of all of them. So that's going to be an interesting one, right? Because I think Kentucky's not getting enough respect. But as somebody who's been one of the biggest backers of LSU throughout the year, I know they took the loss this week, but I feel like just hypothetically, that's just getting it out of the way. That's just getting those bad feelings out, and they're going to be fine. I don't see that Vanderbilt is going to take them to a loss in this upcoming playoff series. Tennessee's a great team. LSU's the guys that I've been thinking this whole time has been the ones that are going to win this conference, and I see no reason to think otherwise right now. But I will put some respect on Mississippi State name, just like Jeremy did, because that was what I was going to point out. They're a lot better of a team than people might see on the surface, and they're probably going to make some waves here. I do think they win their matchup with Texas and start causing people a little bit of fear getting to sleep at night.
Yeah, I just was looking. They've scored 24,000 points on the season, so this is a dangerous team as a 5 seed and could be the sleeper among sleepers amongst all these conference tournaments. As far as, a team that's not one of those top 2 or 3 teams in their league having a chance to win it all and get to the Natty.
And one thing I will say here that is going to be interesting too, I've made this joke throughout the year, but the Tennessee Volunteers have the most seniors in the entirety of our league, right? So they are the win now of win now team more than anything, more than DBU. They are essentially built to just try as a glass cannon and make their shot here. So if anybody wants it more, if anybody's going to be doing some pep talking to their team or whatever magic they might be doing, going on Etsy, having people cast spells on them and things like that, I think Tennessee is going to be pulling out some tricks in the back of their head because they know they need this, because there's no next year for the Tennessee Volunteers. It has to be now. They are built to shoot one cannon and break apart as a glass cannon. So I will say it's going to be interesting to watch them make some waves, because they're pretty much going to make it into the Natty either way. They might not be thinking about the conference tournament. They'll say that they will, but they're looking ahead and thinking, what can I do? How long can these seniors last?
Yeah, they most definitely are. And moving to another team that is kind of like that at times, and as far as like pushing all in and trying to go for it every year, is the 5 seed here, Cal State Fullerton. Tony has always been one of those owners that's willing to trade all future assets to win now. So this will be an interesting conference tournament with the West Coast Conference. You've got the number 1 seed, Northern Colorado. It looks like a juggernaut over there. Scored 28,000 points on the year. But you've also got Santa Clara with 27,000 points on the year as well. So those are the two kind of the cream of this crop. I think that first round matchup could be sneaky good between Santa Clara and Loyola Marymount. This is going to be interesting because Pepperdine and Barton College is another good first round matchup. So I think you have 3 really good first round matchups in this conference tournament. I think Northern Colorado will get by Wayne State pretty easily. I think Northern Colorado gets to the final here and takes it. I think they're going to win this conference tournament and go chalk there. What do you guys think about the West Coast Conference?
I think that this is Northern Colorado's to lose, and I don't see it as even close. I think they're going to roll through this conference and dominate the competition. No disrespect to Santa Clara, who's had a good season, but I think that Northern Colorado is the clear winner in this conference.
Yeah, I want to echo that. Santa Clara did just lose, right? There's one of the I don't know how many 2-loss teams there are left. Might be 3 or 4. So no slouch there either from the Broncos. But Northern Colorado is just such a beast of a team when it comes to their scoring output. They could be dangerous to knock down anybody at any given time. So it's going to be tough because that team is so consistent. They're very pitching heavy, and they have really good pitchers. Ash mentioned Loyola. Shout out to to JT, who took on this team and another one of those, Colorado Buffalo situations where he took this team to the tournament and he was very active. Definitely a tough first round for Santa Clara. I do still think Santa Clara pulls it off, but give me chalk and go North Carolina Barrows here. They're just loaded. They just missed 29,000 points, right? Like it's a really, really strong team, top to bottom. So give me the Bears.
Yeah, I think Northern Colorado was also one of those teams that pushed their chips towards the championship when they made trade deadline acquisitions as well. They were really aggressive going down the line and knowing that they had a chance to really come out of their conference. I don't mean to sound too rude about it, but I think I agree with Jeremy here. I think this is Northern Colorado Bears all the way, and I do think they've made the appropriate trades to kind of solidify where they are. They're in a conference with a lot of smart owners. Santa Clara, Cal State is a guy who always competes. Barton, we know. JT, we know for the Marymount Lions. I got a lot of respect for the minds in this conference, and I do think that there is going to be an easy week 1 for Northern Colorado. They get that little tune-up out of the way, and then we see from there. But realistically, outside of Santa Clara, I don't know if I see anyone posing a big threat to them. And if it's Santa Clara versus Northern Colorado, I'm taking Northern Colorado without a second thought. One thing I will say is we're probably going to pivot into the NIT at some point is I'm going to shout out Sutmeyer and the San Diego team down there. We had some conversations beforehand where we were talking about the variety of luck in this conference. As you can see here, they did finish 9th. You won't see it on the screen there, but they finished 9th out of the Wayne State Warriors, but they outscored them by well over 1,000 points. And San Diego, I think, is going to be one of those teams that could actually, if what they say is true, and Sut's a pretty smart person, they might make some waves in the NIT, and I want to give them their respect. I guess we're going to pivot over to it, but there are a lot of teams in here that might have ran into some bad luck in the season. I think San Diego was actually better than their 13-17 record, to be quite honest with you, and I think that's going to show up in the NIT. But yeah, I'm to be just short about the other one. I think it's Northern Colorado, and that's where it is. They've done it. They've done the work. They've made the trades. This is their conference to lose, exactly as Jeremy said.
And then, as you mentioned, San Diego, I just wanted to bring up this is basically the S curve for the NIT. As you see, each region, we're divided up into 4 regions, seeds 1 through 16 in those regions. So you'll have San Diego as the 2 seed in Region 4, and they will be facing in the first round. Was Region 4? I said okay.
North Carolina, right?
Yeah, they'll be facing North Carolina in that first round. And then the 1 seed in that region, you got South Alabama facing Kansas. And I can actually share my screen. It might make it easier for you guys to see that. Not image file.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you, and this is no disrespect to Mr. Pink. Out of that Region 4, I've got some I'm putting my chips on San Diego if I have to out of that one.
Yeah, San Diego being the number 2 seed definitely has a chance to get out of that region. Temple, you see in that region as a number 4 is interesting to me because they were highly ranked throughout most of the season, and highly thought of amongst our panel for a lot of the season. You've got Portland, who was taken over by a replacement owner. I think Michigan is a team down there, the 6th seed, taking on Xavier in the first round is an interesting matchup because I think Michigan is a team that could go a long way in the NIT. Neil is a good owner and just had some bad luck this year. I think that one of the interesting matchups for me was the South Florida is playing Florida there in the first round. So that'll be interesting in this Region 4. Any thoughts here from you, Chris, or you, Jeremy?
I think for me, I like South Florida here. Not because they beat me. I just think South Florida has the potential to score a lot of points. But I think for me, it's between South Florida and South Alabama, right? I think South Alabama fell on some hard times early in the season where they were putting up points. They were just in a really tough conference. So I like South Alabama and South Florida to meet up at some point here. That would be the championship in their region. But give me the Bulls. Let me give my own conference since I don't really do it enough. Let me give them some love.
For me, I think there's a ton of disparity between the top-ranked teams in the NIT and the bottom-level teams. Unlike the conference championship tourneys, if you're a 1 seed facing a 16, I think you could pretty much lock that in as a guarantee that you're going to win this thing just because of those ways those bottom-level teams are built. Most of those teams have all IL guys and prospects. Very few, actual MLB players that are active and rolling right now.
Yeah, here's my follow-up to that, by the way. If you're watching this show, it's NIT time. If you haven't been setting your lineups, if you've been thinking you've been out of it, if you think you didn't have a shot, you have a chance to play spoiler.
And there is a financial payout for winning the NIT.
You have a chance to play spoiler. You have a chance to talk trash. You have a chance to have a little fun. Your season is not over just because you didn't make the top 8. Set your lineup. Get your guys off the IL and start making some waves. Because while I 100% agree with Jeremy, the disparity between the South Alabama and the lowest ranked team here, Kansas, is obviously not really going to be overcome. I'm not expecting any 16 defeating ones in these setups here, right? And we can be honest about that. But if you're in the middle of the pack there, Temple was a team that was ranked before. and they're going up against Yankee fan Seton Hall. I'm not sure that. Apparently, that's the commissioner of the Big East. But, I mean, I'm just saying, if you're a Mets fan going against the Yankees fan, you got to set your lineup, baby. You got to go ahead and do your thing. South Florida versus Florida is a real matchup. You know, Chris can attest to that, being one of the 97 teams out of Florida that's represented in this 128-team league, right? You've got to set your lineup and do your thing. And if you're in the middle of the pack there for the NIT, as Ash said, there's a financial reward. Listen, click a few buttons, set a lineup, and maybe win $50 out of it. I think at the end of the day, this is the time to give it a shot and have a little fun. Even, listen, we trash talk as sports fans, even if our teams don't. One team wins the World Series every year, and we still find a way to trash talk. So you've got to find a reason to have a little fun here. You're still in it. There is still a tournament bracket. We're going to be talking about you on the show. Go out there and have a little fun. That is my call and my earnest ask, is that go have a little fun. I see Mike turn around. Zag's looking to do some damage in the NIT. Mike, a really fun guy, because when he started his voting before, he ranked Gonzaga as all 25 teams when he started, and that screwed up the algorithm in the beginning, and it was really funny to me to watch Gonzaga 1 through 25. But no, I love that. I want these guys to – I saw some guys even saying they're making moves to do stuff in the NIT. Chuck was another guy that I respected, because although he moved some guys off, he could do some damage in the NIT too. I'm looking forward to the NIT trash talk. I want to see it. I'd be real disappointed if I didn't. So
yeah,
let's
you're
have
talking
a little
about
fun
active
here.
guys, and that's where, like, when you mentioned Chuck, that was who I first thought of. This second round matchup between UCF and Auburn actually could be a really fun NIT matchup. Those are both very active owners, and their teams meeting up in the second round to me is really interesting. That's one that I'm going to be looking forward to if they both advance, of course, because I don't want to be disrespectful to their opponents. The one I wanted to call attention to in Region 1 is Oregon. I have to feel bad for I know I mentioned it earlier in the broadcast, but I have to feel bad for a dude whose team scored that many points and didn't make their conference tournament. But he does get the 1 overall seed in the NIT here. And I feel like he has a pretty clear path to get to the Elite Eight. The Elite Eight, he could face, like an Auburn or UCF or an Ole Miss. That actually is a pretty good pod right here for the NIT, with Ole Miss, UCF, Houston, and Auburn. And even Lafayette has been decent, had weeks where they scored some points. So that is actually a pot of death for the NIT, in my opinion.
Yeah, Auburn, another team that you mentioned that I think they were 500 too. So there are going to be some guys that you got to like lock in on those 8-9 seeds, like you were talking about with Oregon. There are guys that had 500 seasons in really tough conferences. Chris gave some love to South Florida beforehand, but that's the truth of the matter. At the end of the day, some of these teams are good teams. They're not at the level of DBU or Chris's team, but they're good teams, and they can win matchups, and they have won multiple times throughout this year. So we're going to see a lot of interesting teams, and it could come down to 1 or 2 injuries, but I want to see it. I want to see the competition. I do think Oregon has a real good shot too.
Ash, let me ask something for the people watching, right? And just so I can answer when they ask inevitably for the 58th time. Does the NIT affect their draft standing, or is it
no?
just
The draft standing's locked in.
Point? So the draft standing is locked. Oops, I'm sorry about that.
Yes, very important question, Chris, and I see what you're getting at, right? Because even if you win the NIT, if Memphis wins the NIT, you're still getting the 1-1 right now.
So go after it. Yeah.
I don't expect Memphis to win with respect to Esmada and the lovely work he's done to take over that team, but I'm just saying, exactly as he's pointing out, your draft pick is not compromised. So if you're getting 1-4 and you want to try to take a swing, swing, have a little fun, because at the end of the day, even if somebody on here is talking about being the first Natty champion, somebody gets to say, I'm the first NIT winner in this CBL league. That's going to go around for a long time. It's going to be on YouTube. It's going to be here bothering people. The inaugural NIT winner is going to have a lot of fun, right? And you might even have more fun than somebody who gets knocked down around one of the playoffs like me. So at the end of the day, try to go for some glory, baby. It counts.
And I think Marshall is one of those teams that at times has scored a lot of points this year. If you look at this Sweet 16 matchup, I think Thurman Stanford actually could be a fun NIT matchup in the Sweet 16.
I love that. As soon as you scrolled to that, I was like, oh, Stanford and I often hate on the Cardinal because they think they're real special being the Cardinal. You know, it's like, is Ohio State University represented here? Is the Ohio State in here? Did we finally add the by the way?
And I did not add the.
You did not add
I'm not
the?
going to add the. That to me
All right,
is silly.
if they make it past like this first round, I think you should add the.
No,
You know,
if they pull the upset and beat UTSA, I will add the.
All right, good. I like
the second
that.
round upset and beat UTSA, they can get the word the.
If they beat UTSA, we're putting the. And so Ohio State, if you're out there listening to me, I don't even respect your school, but I got your back. I understand that you trademarked the Ohio State University, and we should get it right. You know, it's like when we talk about, you know, Dr. DBU, if we just stop calling him doctor, it's not fair, right? He's earned that doctorate. Ohio State has earned the. I don't actually believe that, but, you know, I think it's important to be able to keep this going. And I see you scroll down to our friend Rutgers, who is also going to be trying to make some waves here. Rutgers did actually, you know, credit to Peter, by the way. He started asking some questions and kind of like picking up more understanding on how the league was going towards the end. I don't know if he's still out there listening, but I would love to know if he feels, there we go. He's, you know, he's still out there listening. If he's got an NIT run in him, I mean, Rutgers is local and near and dear to my heart, so I respect it. Their first matchup is against Akron, right?
Yeah. And a team on autopilot, so there's your chance.
And Rutgers, you're the underdog, baby. This is where you like to be. You pulled it off once against Indiana State, so make some magic happen and see if you could run into Old Dominion, who was also from my conference, but not setting his lineups as much. So,
oh wow! So Akron single-handedly eliminated Marshall from our conference, and they're on autopilot. Didn't even notice.
Yeah, that's I didn't notice that they actually beat Marshall this past week.
Yeah.
So that's a tough loss for Marshall. Red Broyer is one of our longtime owners now in the Discord, and so I kind of feel bad for him not making the conference tournament.
Oh, it's funny. I don't know if you saw this, but Red Broyer posted that he left a Miso and a Iovaldi start on the bench this week, and that would have gotten him the 8th seed because he would have beat the league average.
I actually am going to predict right now that Marshall will win the NIT.
I wouldn't be shocked. I think it's between Oregon and Marshall. Again, I'm going to stick with
I was there. Can you pop back to that screen with all the teams at once?
Yeah.
If you could. I'm interested in taking a look at this here because, you know, I shouted out Chuck, but I've got a lot of respect for him. I do think he's been thinking about this run here, and he thinks he can do some damage here. He'll probably get through the first round, right? So you've got UCF. Oregon, of course, is a big contender. UTSA, as you mentioned. Carleton barely was in a tough Big East, and they were hanging around that 8th spot for a while too. So they're also no slouch, right? Let's see who else. We got some other interesting names here. Campbell, I think, also barely missed their conference. They got knocked out with a 500 record as well.
Well, and we can't ignore Antonio here with Florida State. They put on a big push the second half of the year. I believe they started out like 0-14 or something to start.
Yeah, he's been pretty loud about stating that he misunderstood the values to start the season and he regretted everything. So, you know, now's your chance to make amends.
And I'll say one thing.
Teams here.
Just flipping through the scores, and I don't know how many of these teams bench guys they should have started and things like that. Maybe some of these guys sandbag to try and get into the NIT for all I know. But one thing I'll say is that even those 1 seeds, some of these guys are only scoring in the 500s this week. It's possible that we see a ton of upsets in the NIT. I wouldn't be betting on any of those 15 and 16 seeds, as I mentioned before. But, you know, if you're in the middle of the pack in the NIT, just like Ram said, put your balls on. Let's get going. You never know what you might do here.
No, and you say that.
And Memphis real wild shakeups here.
Memphis has put a back-to-back. Now, I say this obviously.
No, you're right. You're right. I know what you mean.
Back-to-back 400-plus weeks, right? Like, you get one of these teams putting up 300 points because they just don't have a roster. Memphis is one of those teams where, like, hey, they got the 1-1 already. You can play spoiler for some of these teams that bought players specifically for an NIT run.
I know BYU.
What did Oregon score last week?
BYU talked about it too, by the way, in Region 2. They mentioned last week that they had some hopes for. I think they said that their team has been hot in the second half, and they've been looking forward to the NIT. So I respect anyone who's openly talking about the fact they want to do some damage in the NIT. And remember the timing of this right now. You're getting that same benefit of the All-Star thing right now, so you're going to have a week and a half. You have some couple waiver periods, and that's why I say that. Like, remember, waivers are not shut down if you're in the NIT. I want to be clear to all of you.
Don't
if anyone's
remind them.
listening. What waivers are open for you if you're in the, because you should be looking to improve your team as much as you can. So you have the waiver period for tomorrow. You have the waiver period for Thursday. You have 4 waiver periods coming up that you can make some switches. If you think, I was just missing one guy, make your move and pick somebody up. You have 4 waiver periods in this week to not only stockpile for now, but even if you've got an easy matchup to start the NIT, to go forward. Right? There are players out there that may not have won you a title in the Natty, but they could win you something in the NIT, because there are reasonable IL replacements sitting on that waiver wire. They may not be for Chris and Jeremy, but they are out there and they're available.
Yeah.
So go ahead and put in 2 of your fab dollars. Fab does not roll over in this league. So go ahead and make a move and shore up your roster. Some of these guys sitting there are freshmen too. Go ahead and make your moves, have your fun, do what you need to do to make some moves. Take advantage of that double time period that we have with the All-Star break and shore up for the NIT if you want.
Absolutely.
Well, I'm just noticing.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. I'm just noticing that Cal State Bakersfield put up what looks like the 26th most amount of points in the league this week with almost 900 points. They're sitting in the NIT. If you're going into this conference NIT tournament and you just put over 800 points up on the board, you should be feeling pretty good about yourself as a contender here.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's very true. I just wanted to thank everybody for a great regular season. I know because of the volume of weeks that we have to have for our postseason in this massive league, it cuts our regular season a little shorter than most leagues are. But I appreciate everybody, all their hard work this year and dedication to making it a great league. It's been my favorite league that I'm a part of. And I want to thank Ram, Chris, and Jeremy for being on here tonight. You guys have made this fun for me tonight. Just kind of go around the room and give you guys final thoughts on the regular season that we've had and expectations for the postseason. We'll start with you, Chris. What do you think?
I mean, hell of a regular season. I said it at the start of the show, right? This has been by far, and it's not because I won a bunch of games. This has been by far the most engaging and fun league I've been a part of. And I'm Ash knows how many leagues I joined in the off season and on the server. So like, even within this server, this league is a beast of its own. And you couldn't expect anything other than chaos with 128 teams. I'm super excited about the postseason. Super excited to see the NIT run. I know we mentioned a little bit, touched a little bit about the non-conference winners that aren't in the NIT potentially having a little mock tournament between them. I don't know if that's going to happen or not. Ash can kind of let us know at the end, but for the losers bracket in the conference tournaments. But other than that, man, I'm really excited, and I'm super excited about the start of next season for teams like myself and Tennessee and even Jeremy. Right, like we're very senior heavy, and if we want to compete, we have a lot of work to do. So I'm excited. I'm excited for the grind, right? Getting to work those phones. I heard that Jeremy's been calling and DMing people already, selling off potential players in deals already. So it's going to be a lot of fun, man. And I'm super excited about this postseason.
And I kind of look at it as the heading into the next season, just like Ash really talked about a ton. If you had seniors before the trade deadline, you need to sell those guys. Well, for teams like us that are extremely top heavy, that have all these seniors on board, when we roll over into next season, it's selling time. It's sales time, because we can't sit on these guys that are seniors knowing that we've got maybe 7 or 8 players on our team that are, at least at this point, that are good players. Most of these guys are going to be on somebody else's roster sooner rather than later when that next season rolls over. So, but that's all fun. That's what makes this league so interesting, is there are so many different ways to build your team, rebuild your team. You buy guys one week, you flip them the next week. And because there are so many people in this league, there's just so many different personalities and ways to see things and different visions that allows you to do, all kinds of creative things. And that's one of the great things about such a unique league is you can be extremely creative.
Ram, what do you got?
I've got one thing to say very playfully, but guys like Chris and Jeremy are number 1 seeds. They don't need your support. They're already supporting themselves fine. DBU's got a doctorate. Chris is all happy about that. If you want to throw your support behind somebody, you want to see a little fun content, find the unranked UConn Huskies. Go watch some Dragon Ball Z, right, about Spirit Bomb giving me your power. Give the UConn Huskies your love and your power, and find an underdog to root for and believe in them. All right, believe in them. These guys have enough support. They know what's going on. I said, DBU got his doctorate. He's having a great life. Chris looks like he got drafted to MLB tonight and he got interviewed. He's married with kids. He's having a great life, all right? Take the everyman. Take the man who's had it hard and had some bad luck. Even the commissioner made a decision to knock his team down to win. Root for that guy. Root for the UConn Huskies. Let's bring a chip home where it belongs to somebody that will really, really benefit from it, all right? Find the UConn Huskies in your heart, root for them, and believe in the underdog. That's what I'm going to tell you all.
Well, as I mentioned before, I don't really have anything else to add to my earlier comments. Just want to thank everybody for a great year. Please let us know in the comments what your thoughts are, predictions are for the playoffs, and we will see you next time on the channel, guys. Take it easy.